It is a wonderful pleasure to welcome Valmy on this program. She is a musician from Newfoundland, Canada. How are you today, Valmy? Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been the sun came out this afternoon,
Mhm.
so I went a stroll. So yeah, it's feeling good.
So, how's winter like there?
Um, Winter can be a mixed bag. Like I would say that we're not quite in winter yet. We've had some snow that stayed and then melted, and so um I think the worst of it is still yet to come. But right now it's still quite pleasant.
Mhm.
Mainly wet, some days of snow. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Like I could walk today without a hat and I felt fine. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to live in Ontario, and I think the worst of winter is somewhere in January, February. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up in Ontario, so that's
Mhm.
the dry cold, yeah, and like really low,
Oh, oh yeah.
really low temperatures. Here it's wet. It's more wet. It gets
Mhm.
in your bones differently, but I remember like nose hairs freezing and
Mhm. Yeah, the dryness is what got me the worst. It was way worse than the cold, I think.
hmm yeah, it can be intense.
So, how long have you lived in Newfoundland?
Just over 4 years. I moved here in September 2019.
Okay.
Mhm.
What made you decide to move?
I was living in Nova Scotia doing my music therapy degree. And
Mhm.
so after when you study music therapy and you want to practice as a music therapist, you have to do a 1,000-hour clinical internship.
Uh,
And so, yeah, so you need to apply to a position that has a music therapist or somebody who can like supervise you, and so you get your hours of experience. And so I applied to a bunch of places across Canada, and one of the positions I applied for was in St. John's, Newfoundland. And so me and my supervisor really clicked and I was really enthusiastic about the placement. So I moved here for that internship and
mhm.
I finished it around April 2020. But by then, I was really liking Newfoundland and we were just I knew that like the beautiful summer weather was coming. So I figured I would stay through the summer and see how things were. And then I ended up getting a job in my field, and so I was like, well, I'll do 1 year contract. Let's see how it is. Um, yeah, and now I'm still here just because I really love it here. So I'm glad I
Wonderful.
ended up.
Yeah. So, what do you like most about? So you live in St. John's, yes?
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you like most about St. John's?
I feel like the I feel like the friendliness of the arts community, sure, and
Mhm.
then also how easy it is. I guess if you have a vehicle, like how close it is to being able to like kind of like get to the ocean and get to the trails as well. It's just like it's not too far of a drive to access other parts and kind of have that outdoors fresh air alone time.
Mhm.
Um, which is like a really good mix for me to like have community and to have friends who like don't live too far away and you can just like walk down the street and run into somebody that you know or that you like. But you can also kind of scare you away and do your own reflecting and processing and frolicking. So yeah.
I see. So, is it like a plus when you compare it to Ontario, the more accessibility when it comes to the outdoors?
Hmm. No, I would say it was a plus, but I think that when I was living in Ontario, it wasn't something necessarily that I missed or considered a lack, just because um I know it's like you don't know things until you know things. So while I was there, I knew okay, it might be a bit of a drive to get somewhere, but that was fine. If I wanted to and was motivated enough, I could. But I think that living here, I just have like a greater appreciation for how it's easier to access. And I feel like if I were to move away, I would maybe then it would feel like a lack because I'm like I had it so easy, but it's something that I wasn't really aware of or didn't really feel like I needed as much until I was able to um, kind of participate in it like that. So.
I see. So, do you see yourself more of an outdoorsy person?
Definitely, yeah. Not so much this season. I've definitely been more indoors than as usual. I feel like the daylight savings, lack of lack of sunlight has hit me a bit harder this year. So I'm definitely just like opting to stay home and like finding it harder to get up in the morning and go do things before the day like I usually would. But I think sometimes it's just a signal of needing rest as well. So I still, when I do get outside, I love it. I'm like, oh, my body needed this and I should do more of this. Just can be difficult to like maintain a routine, even when it's a routine that is ultimately gonna help you. Yeah.
Yes, of course. I used to be way too much of an indoorsy person, but I found out from time to time that I needed the outdoor time in order to have a more quality life, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, where did you grow up in Ontario?
I grew up in Brampton.
Hmm.
Yeah. So just outside of Toronto.
What's it like there?
Brampton? I know it's way more populated now compared to when I lived there. But I mean, I like living in Brampton. It's kind of all I knew because when my parents moved there, I was young and I did all of my school like kind of like just outside of Brampton. And so yeah, I kind of did like my friends were there or just outside of Brampton and like any after school recreational things we did there. So yeah, it was fine. And I feel like my parents still live there, so I think that's my link and connection back to Brampton. But I feel like now that that I've lived other places and that my friends live in other places too, and we can all be connected virtually,
Hmm.
um, I don't feel maybe the same attachment that I did maybe when I first left. But it's nothing about the place itself. I think it's just like you experience other things, and then you know that, um, yeah, you just form other connections in different locations. So
I
yeah.
see.
Mhm.
So, you said your parents moved to Brampton, so where were they originally?
So my parents are from Cameroon, so like we're
Mhm.
Cameroonian, and they studied in Europe, and
Mhm.
then they immigrated from Europe to Canada after I was born. And so we moved, and they've kind of always lived like in the GTA. But then once they moved to Brampton, they kind of stayed in Brampton. That's where we did our school and lived life. So yeah.
I see. So, have you gotten a chance to go back to your parents' country of origin, Cameroon?
Yeah, I went back and well, I'd gone when I was younger, but I don't have memories of that. But there are pictures of me being there with family members, so it did happen. But I went um in 2011,
Hmm.
the summer before I went to university. We went for I want to say 2 months. My concept of time is it could have been a month or a month and a half. Um, but yeah, but that was my first time back in a state where I have full memories of it, and that was really special. And I think that also like because how old was I when I went back? 17 maybe, or maybe I just turned 18. I think that like if I were to go back now, I think I'd have like more appreciation for the time being able to be spent there because I really enjoyed being there when I went back the first time. Um, but I don't know, I think I kind of took it for granted a bit. And now that it's been a while and like a lot of families there and like people pass away, it makes me want to go back and like uh kind of reestablish some connections um with my like adult brain versus my late teenager. It's summertime. I want to do this and this and this. So yeah, but I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to go and see family and yeah, meet people who like knew me and my sisters, but who like I didn't have a memory of before. So now I can like kind of put faces to names and
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I recently had a loved one pass away too, so I can understand how that feels.
sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Um, so you said that you've lived plenty of places. So of among the places that you've lived, which ones do you have the most fond memories of?
Um, well, honestly, outside of Ontario, the only place I've lived would have been Nova Scotia, and then here. And I really love Nova Scotia. I still love Nova Scotia. I feel like if I wasn't if I for whatever reason needed to move from Newfoundland, I probably would go back to Nova Scotia. I think that was kind of my bridge into the East Coast and really loving the landscapes here, but also um yes, the I don't know, not I want to say welcoming nature, not like Ontario isn't welcoming, but I think that there's a different type of like of closeness almost that affects let me figure out what is it. Yeah, I feel like when I was in Ontario, it was easier for me to kind of like be in my own world or like in my family world or my friend circles, and that was kind of it. But I found, and maybe it's with age. When I moved to Nova Scotia, I found that like um I was able to start kind of creating or like feeling like a sense of being part of a greater community, and I think that was like through music and the fact that I was there for school. Um, and just kind of like knowing being connected to somebody because we live in the same place versus being connected because we're related or we're in the same class. And yeah, that's what I've appreciated about living here. And maybe also just at that age, I was in a place where I was more willing to be social with people who weren't like immediate acquaintances. Um, but yeah, but now it's pretty much tied because I mean now I've lived in Newfoundland a little bit longer than like the time that I stayed in Nova Scotia, which feels weird because my time in Nova Scotia felt very long, in a good way. And my time in Newfoundland has felt short, but I love it. I think that if I'd be very content to just keep living out east, and then knowing that because my friends and family, there's always going to be those relationships that bring me back to Ontario at least once a year. So yeah.
So you mentioned going to school for music therapy. So did you do your schooling in Nova Scotia then?
Yeah, so I did a degree in Ontario, and then I took a year off, and then I moved to Nova Scotia and I switched gears. That's where I did my music therapy degree. Um yeah, and now that's what I'm working in now here in St. John. So
I see. So what was the name of the school?
Acadia in Nova Scotia?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, Acadia University. Mhm.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I like to visit both Nova Scotia and Newfoundland at some point too. I think first I think it would be St. John's. I know more people there through doing this show, and from what I can gather, you guys have a pretty diverse music scene going on there.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very eclectic. Yeah, let me know when you visit. We can connect in person.
I look forward to it. Yes. So tell me more about the music therapy program, the one that you studied under.
But the pro so yeah, so it is I think may have changed now. Um, yeah, I can't speak to what it is right now because I know they're making some changes. But when I was in it, it's a bachelor's degree program where you're doing courses that are specific to music therapy and then related courses. So um, courses that are focusing on like improvisation or on your principal or secondary instrument to strengthen those skills and with leading and working with clients, and then um, certain prerequisites of psychology courses, um, and then like involvement in group ensemble courses as well. And then within that program, we also had to do practicums. So um, every, or at least for me, how many semesters of what did I do? But per semester, you would have a placement where you are working with the music therapist within the community, um, observing and then also facilitating with music therapy group or individual sessions within as well, so that you kind of have that um, firsthand experience to marry with what you're learning in the classes. Um, yeah, and I'm really happy I went there because music therapy was something that was on my mind, but I didn't really start thinking about seriously until my year off after my other degree. And so I think going through that program and just learning more about the field and seeing how it resonated with me kind of allowed me to um, to commit or at least be motivated to like explore it thoroughly. And now that I'm working in the field, it definitely feels like what I'm supposed to be doing, which is um yeah, which I didn't really feel about other things prior to that. So yeah, so it feels good.
I see. So you're currently working as a music therapist.
Yeah, I work as a music therapist part-time.
Mhm. So there must be some considerable overlap between what you do as a musician versus your therapy practice.
Yeah, I would say the overlap is um the overlap is the music and using instruments, but the mindset's very different. Because I find like for music therapy, my focus is on like the individual or the individuals like in a group that I'm working with, and like what are they needing in the moment, what are their goals, like how can I support them with what their strengths are and what their interests are. How can I let them take the lead? How can I take a step back or take a step forward so that everyone's feeling comfortable? And so um, there's not a lot of me in that dynamic, which is good because like I'm trying to create space, leave space for them, and just to make sure that they are feeling as comfortable and as safe to be vulnerable and work through what they're willing to work through. Whereas I find that um, performing and writing for myself as a musician is more of like my reflective process. Like, what am I liking? What am I needing to say? Um, what am I willing to share? What am I wanting to share? What am I trying to figure out? And so that's a bit more. It's way more introspective. Yeah.
I see. And so give us a thought or two about how music can be therapeutic.
How music can be therapeutic. Well, it's a big. I'm like, come on. How do I? I'm like, how do I answer this in a concise way? Well, I mean, I think that it's again for everybody who I guess enjoys or listens to or is involved in music that um a lot of people can have the experience of hearing lyrics or hearing a passage or a melody they can actually like feel move through them, either because it is something that seems very specific to their own situation, or it's something that just sounds like aesthetically pleasing, or maybe it doesn't sound pleasing, maybe it's quite dissonant and crunchy, but that also is satisfying because it's echoing um whatever in- internal interpersonal conflict you're experiencing. So I think it's like that level of like nonverbal understanding that can happen without um you as a person having to come out and say it or like find all the ways to articulate it to feel understood. And I think also because it's quite personal, it's like if you want to listen to music um or engage with music, or like whether that's making music, it's like that's something you can just do on your own at any time versus like we need to like ask permission or have somebody else present to be able to have to gain that experience. And so I think that um there's like the gift of having that control and preference, I think as well is also part of it. And so yeah, I think it's like it's the soothing elements, it's the finding understanding and something else that you're able to really make your own. I mean, that's just a couple, but
I see. So in terms of your practice, do you focus more on the listening to music part or the playing music part?
in my music therapy practice,
Yeah.
that depends on who I'm working with. So it's really guided by the interests and the preferences of the individual. And so if there's somebody where listening to music is more meaningful, that's where we'll start. If there's somebody where making music is where they're at, and like they have words and ideas or melodies and they want to like create something from that, then we start there. Or maybe it's somebody that has no experience doing that at all but is interested in that, and that ends up being another vehicle being able to express whatever's going on, or at least do something you can feel accomplished by or surprised by, or feel like you're creating a product that didn't exist before, and that kind of empowerment. So yeah, I I would say that in my practice, I'm really just going with where that person is at and what they're needing in the moment.
Mhm.
And so it looks so different person to person.
I see. Yeah. So I think what I find really interesting about music is that it can be both personal and communal at the same time, in that there's a piece of recording that may mean a lot to me, but the experience of listening to that piece of music is enhanced when I'm part of a crowd of people who are listening to the same piece, and
Mhm.
they all have share that personal connection, and you can connect to people based on your musical preferences and such.
Yeah, totally. When you say that, it makes me think of like, yeah, when you go to a concert and the whole crowd is singing
Hmm.
the chorus that everyone knows, and you're like, whoa,
Hmm.
I sing this chorus in the car, and now I'm standing around all these strangers, and we're all just like really loving this artist or this song for our own reasons, but we're part of this collective. So yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, great.
Yeah. So do you sense that, at least in your area, St. John's, the live music scene has revived somewhat since the pandemic?
I would say so. Yeah, and I think that like when I moved here, I was only here a couple months before things shut down. Um, and I think when I moved here, what I was really excited by and surprised by is like how much music there is happening all the time. It's like every night there's a show, definitely every weekend. Um, late shows, early shows. People are always playing or wanting to connect, and everyone's in at least one band and supporting playing with each other. And so um, I definitely feel like I'm seeing or have been seeing that again, where people are just really excited to play, to keep making music, and are appreciating, um, yeah, that we can all gather in person in spaces to witness that and be part of that. Um, there's definitely, I feel like there's definitely like earlier shows now, which, um, and maybe that's just because I paid more attention to earlier shows because now I'm getting tired later at night. Um, but compared to pre-COVID, I think that a lot of the shows more aired on the late side, and now there's pretty good balance of like shows starting early, shows starting late. But yeah, still lots of music going on, and so it's one of the reasons why I love living here, just knowing that
Mhm.
it's music always.
I see. So in terms of early and late, what's the earliest show that is available, and what's the latest?
Yeah, I would say typically like an early show is one that would start at like 7 or 8 p.m.
Mhm.
Um, and then maybe a late show would be a show that starts at like midnight or so, but it's more of like there's a show and there's 3 or 4 bands playing, so the
Mhm.
first band is on at 9 or 10, but by the time the last band gets on it's like midnight or so forth. So yeah, sort of that range.
I see. So for you personally, is the end of the pandemic exciting for you, since you have this new album coming out and such?
I'm excited about the album.
About performing these songs live.
Yeah, it's interesting because the songs on this album were like half of them were written while I was living in Nova Scotia, and the other half were written since moving here. And where I was performing in Nova Scotia and have been performing here as well, it's like a lot of these songs I'd already been playing live, save for a couple of the ones that are more recent. Um, and so it's interesting. It feels kind of similar playing them again, but I think that in the process of the album, I got to really have a lot of fun with imagining what the arrangements could be like when it's not just me, because I usually perform solo, and so arranging for the album, I was kind of like, well, I can do anything really within within my abilities, and um, so I really enjoyed the process of coming kind of like fleshing the songs out beyond just voice and guitar, where I felt like there could be more. And since since once before the album and then once after the album, I was able to form it with a full band. Some of my friends in town, And that's really cool. Like that's really fun to make music with people and to hear these songs that like I've known for years as just me and a guitar, and to hear the other parts um come out and hear like, yeah, that's the musicians bringing their craft and their personality to it, and kind of knowing like, whoa,
Mhm.
like 5 years ago none of this other stuff like existed, and now it feels like a core part of what was maybe just the bones and the structure of the song. So yeah, so I feel like performing with the band, I've really enjoyed, and hopefully we'll be doing more of in the coming year. But yeah.
Mhm. So I'm guessing even to a musician, a song sounds different live, as opposed to say in studio. Yeah.
Yes. I guess sometimes. I mean, uh I guess it depends. Like the because I still like I have performed solo since the album's come out, and so I think I definitely now it's more obvious um what parts aren't being played when I'm solo. And so that's different than the studio recording, because I'm like, piano would come in here, or then I would hear the bass enter and it's just me. But I think also because I'd already been performing um the songs before the record, it doesn't feel like there's a lack or there's anything missing. I just can imagine. I'm like, oh, I know that there can be more though, and that there will be more in the show. So
Mhm.
definitely different experiences though, for sure.
I see. So I would assume that you were quite connected with the music scene of Nova Scotia.
Pardon, but I was quite connected.
Yeah, with the music scene of Nova Scotia. Like, were you like involved in that scene at all?
Yeah, well, I was living in the Annapolis Valley, like in Wolfville, because I was going to Acadia. Um, and a lot of my friends in the music therapy program were also singer songwriters, and like it's a small town, there's only a couple of places to play, so I felt connected within that community, because yeah, you meet people playing shows. And like my one of my best friends, Sarah McInnes, she's a singer songwriter based in Nova Scotia, and when we met, she had just released her album, and so it was like learning her songs and singing with her. And so yeah, it was I did feel connected in the sense that it's like, oh, I'm making these new friends, and we all love music, and we all like to harmonize with each other. And so we go to each other's shows, or we go to open mics together, and we're meeting each other through that. And so yeah, it was a great way to connect with that common interest, but also to really, I think we all really admired what each other was doing. So yeah.
So is it easy for a musician to make friends with other musicians?
Is it, I mean, I guess it just depends on the I feel like if you want to um connect with somebody else, that I think that can happen, because that's where your intention is. Um and I think that's what my experience has been. Anybody that I've wanted to. I think it's definitely easier to connect when you have that common interest. It's kind of like the bridging point. And so I think that's why it kind of happens naturally. I don't think it necessarily means that every time you connect, it's automatic friendship. But I think that like if you two people are compatible, then the fact that you're compatible, in addition to you both love and appreciate music, just makes that stronger and funner. And sometimes people make music and personalities just aren't compatible, and so it doesn't work. But and that's still okay. But yeah.
So do you see yourself as a more pro-social person, or do you prefer to just keep it solo, so to speak?
In general, or like music wise, or
In general, personality-wise, I suppose.
I would say in the middle. I love connecting with people, but I also like my alone time. So, like I love meeting people and learning about people and forming friendships, but I do need alone time to recharge and to make sure that um I can be as genuine as I can in like the relationships that I'm having. So, yeah, but I'm all for connecting, and yeah, being able to learn from one another.
Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I do find social interactions can be quite exhausting. I think yeah, I prefer to just read.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, it depends like what kind of like energy level you're coming into. There are definitely some days where I know I'm like, today can't be a day that I have conversations with tons of people. Well, there are other days where I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter how many people I'm talking to, it's all fine. And then I might crash later on that night, but it's not like the crash is happening while I'm in active conversation. So yeah, it just goes to we all have different capacities, right? So we just gotta honor that and give ourselves the space. So
Mhm. So, in terms of attending, say, live music concerts, is it as important to listen to a musician that you don't know uh, as someone you do?
I would find, it's interesting. I think that prior to, yeah, prior to moving out east, like my concert experiences had always been like somebody's gonna play a show in Toronto, and if I know them, I try to get tickets. Like if I know them, I'm a fan, I want to get tickets. If I don't know them, I try to look up their music, and if I like it and it's affordable, I go.
Mhm.
And so I was kind of always going to shows where like I knew the artists, or or if anything, maybe I knew the artist and I didn't know who the opener was, and that was fine. But um, there are just so many artists and musicians that I didn't know existed until like I moved to the area, and now found that with a lot of the festivals out east, even if I see somebody on the what's the word I'm looking for, the list of artists who are playing, what is that, the schedule, my brain, if I let's say if I see the name of an artist that's going to be playing at a festival and I'm not familiar with them, I think that prior me would have been like, oh, I don't know them, and just look for the ones I do. But I
Mhm.
found that because I'm just interested in music and I want to watch, I'm always so happy that I went because I'm like, wow, I didn't know much about this person's music. I didn't know they were creating music, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. So, um, there's obviously so much that I don't know about that I'm probably gonna like. And so I think that if you have the time and the resources to go and see artists, even if you haven't heard of them, do it because you'll probably be really surprised. And also if you don't like it, it's kind of like, okay, now I just learned that I'm not into that particular style on this day, and that's fine too. But yeah, I feel like that's the way we discover things, right? It's like you're curious about something, you check them out, and then they end up being the person that you want to hear all the stuff about. Or maybe you just end up hearing them that one time and that was really special, and then things move on. But yeah, I would say it's just as important to check out the artist that maybe you're not as familiar with, just to see what resonates with you, right?
Mhm. Yeah, maybe that's why their music festivals are so appealing, especially to artists, because there's an assortment of names, those who you may know and those who may not, and you get to be introduced and exposed to those who do you do not know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably my favorite thing about festivals, being like, ooh, what's going on here?
Mhm. Yeah, but at the same time, it involves being outside for an extended period of time, which I'm not too fond of. And I think given what happened in this year's Burning Man festival, yeah, that's not something too appealing either.
Oh, I didn't hear about what happened with Burning Man, but I
Um,
know like,
I think it was like flooded or something, and people got
oh,
stuck there.
geez. Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not a deal. Yeah. Well, I guess but I think that's also what I appreciate about festivals too is um they come in so many different forms, right? Like you could have a festival that is multi-huge mega stage, and maybe you're out in the hot sun for multiple days, and if you really want to see those people or be in that crowd, you do it because you love it. But I also love like that there are festivals where it's like, hey, we're just gonna have a week long
Mhm.
um artists playing at multiple venues, and so you get your wristband, you get your pass, and you can get to go inside, and maybe you get to maybe there's seating, maybe it's standing room. um it's like you go after work, you go in the middle of the afternoon. Like I think that there's lots of ways to do festivals because they come in different shapes and forms to kind of meet your energy needs and still let you see the artists you want to see. So yeah, because I think that prior to I hadn't been to many festivals, but the festivals I had gone to had been it's the weekend, and you camp on the grounds and then you're out all day because you want to see the people, which I loved that. That was really fun. But I also appreciate the wow, I can hop around to these venues and see who I want to see, or stay at this one venue and see through that before I move along, which is good to kind of know, like, okay, if I only have the energy for this or the resources for one, I'm not having to do all this investment um for something that I might end up being too tired to attend later on. So.
I see. Yeah. There's a music festival in the city where I live, Budapest, which is pretty well known. It's an annual thing. I think it's Sziget Festival. Sziget means island in the Hungarian language.
Cool.
And it's going on, I think, in August of next year. So
Cool.
yeah, if you have a chance to go to this town during that time, you're welcome to enjoy it.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna look that up. Cool. It's called Seagat Festival.
Yeah, I think in English it is Sziget.
Okay, cool. Yes, I'm trying to put on my like look up look up festivals to play and places to book hats. So it's cool
Oh
to
yeah,
add that. That's
yeah,
really
that
cool.
too. So where's the farthest that you've been to perform your music?
Farthest to perform. Oh, I went to the Yukon for the first time last September.
Oh,
Um, there's an amazing festival up in Whitehorse called Wonder Horse Emerging Arts and Music Festival. And I believe that last September, I think last September was the first year of that festival. I could be mistaken, first or second year. Um, yeah, and so I played in Whitehorse and I also played in Carcross, and that's the farthest I've gone, and it was beautiful. And like the Yukon territories, has been a place I've wanted to visit for a while. When I was still living in Nova Scotia, and not before I'd moved to Newfoundland, I was like toying with the idea of maybe moving to the Yukon and trying to do, because there isn't a lot of music therapy established up there. So I had an idea of like maybe moving up there and trying to create a program. And a good friend of mine who I did music therapy school with is living up there, and so it was always on the list. So it was cool to go up there and perform and to see her. And I loved it. I don't think I'll be moving there. I did love it there, but it's mostly just because I think it would just be hard. Moving is hard. But I wanna visit again and go as many times as funds will allow. So yeah, that's definitely the farthest um I've been thus far. Yeah.
so tell me about your album. It's titled In Between, and I listened to it a few days ago, and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening. Um yeah, the in between, we recorded it. So me and my friend Michelle, who engineered the record, started recording it at the end of February of 2023. And yeah, like I said before, it's a collection of songs that I wrote, um, that I started writing once I moved to Nova Scotia. And the first single off of that song, actually, Paper Intentions, was a song that I co-wrote with an artist named Aaron Turk, who's based in PEI. We attended the Canadian Song Conference that happened in Prince Edward Island in 2022. And we are part of this song challenge, excuse me, where we had to get together and co-write the song and work with the producer. And we had 2 days, I think, 2 days to do it, which is intense but really fun. And so that experience introduced me to Steph Copeland, who co-produced the album, and also was one of my first experiences like co-writing and working like with an engineering team in that facet. Like I'd recorded before with Michelle earlier that year, but I hadn't worked with a producer, and so it really, I think that experience combined with the stuff I'd already done with Michelle really kind of like increased my confidence and like, okay, I think I can move forward with taking on the project of making a record, because something I've wanted to do for many years. Just felt really intimidated by it. And I love I love performing, and I was performing a lot, and so I was feeling quite content with just continuing to do that. Um, but I knew that eventually I would want to record. And I think that like after those two experiences, I was sort of like, I think that if I'm feeling if I'm feeling like it's within my capacity now, I should do it first instead of allowing there to be more reasons to delay it. Yeah, and making the record was a really beautiful experience. Yeah, just being able to like revisit those songs and reimagine them and to work with the friends that I've made since moving here. Um, which is so interesting because it's like oh, when a lot of those songs were written, I hadn't even met them yet. So to think that uh Amy and Carol are recording on this song that I wrote in 2016 before when living in Newfoundland wasn't even on the radar, you know? And now like their beautiful strings are on this track and yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So what's it like seeing those songs that you've either written or co-written being realized for the first time?
Um it's it feels really special. Because it was a lot of hard work that brought them to where they are, but also I realized that there's a lot of like trust that had to go into it as well. Like just going with what felt right and then um extending that trust to being like, okay, I think this is what I want to sound like. Now can you play it? Or I think this is what I want to sound like. I'm gonna try and play it in a way that feels satisfying to me. And to hear it all come together. Um yeah, it's been yeah, I feel very proud of the record and I'm really happy that um I got to involve my friends in it too because now they're part of the record and yeah, I'm just a different person compared to the person who has started writing those songs. So it feels really cool to kind of to be able to realize them as I'm growing and changing. Um, while the arrangements are still staying true to like the sentiment of the original songs and like I think that when I was writing those songs I kind of knew like oh I'm liking the things I'm writing and I think I want to make an album like I had the album title for a very long time like I knew I'm like if I ever make a record it's going to be called The In Between and I was doing just a lot of like figuring out like I don't know, like how to navigate transition and how am I processing things and um like relationship dynamics, like how am I navigating that? And yeah, I just feel like I was doing lots of exploring and figuring out and there was a lot of discomfort with not feeling like I had answers for myself, not feeling like I understood. Um and I feel like where I am now, it's interesting because I feel like I have a lot more acceptance and peace towards existing in that limbo period of not quite knowing where you're gonna land. I think that was like really terrifying and anxiety invoking earlier. Whereas now, I mean, still like not the most comfortable thing, but I mean, I've had so many beautiful experiences that have occurred even though I didn't have everything figured out. So I think it's helped me kind of like lean into there's so much possibility and potential and so many things to figure out and like there are things that can be really great that you can't even imagine that can still happen and surprise you. Um, and so now that the record is done, and I kind of have this a slightly altered view of what that limbo or transition period feels for me, it's cool to kind of like look back and clearly see what my perspective was and how that has like changed and grown with me, um, while still feeling like those songs and stories are still very valid because like I mean I don't like I still feel similarly. I just like have a different approach, I guess.
Mhm. So the In Between is your debut record.
Mm.
So tell me about the first days of its release. What was it like? Yeah.
What the first days of
Yeah,
releasing it
what the
were like?
first days of releasing it like? How did you feel? Like what was the reception?
Um, oh man, I felt so grateful. Everybody was being very kind. I got lots of kind messages from friends. Um, My mom bought it on Bandcamp right away, to which I was like, you don't have to buy it. I can just I can just give it to you. But yeah, lots of kind messages from friends. I mean, all summer because I'd released a couple singles that summer, and so just getting really supportive feedback and excitement. And then once it was finally out, um, it was weird because it's like I'd known the songs for so long and I'd been sitting with them, and Michelle had been mixing them and been sending them back and forth, and they were being mastered. So I just felt like I really knew these songs, and I was like, okay, now anybody who wants to listen can also access and hear these songs. So that was a cool feeling to kind of get messages from people saying like what songs they liked, or what ideas they were into. Um, and yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind because the next weekend I went to Nova Scotia to play in Deep Roots Music Festival, and so it was like the album came out, and I was like, well, gotta prep and get into gear to go to Nova Scotia for a week. I mean, which ultimately was the best because a lot of my friends live there, so I got to have a late summer reunion with them, and also for the first time be able to like go and perform with merch because I've never had merch. I was like, wow, I actually have physical CDs, so that if somebody wants to buy a copy, I can actually provide that. Versus just directing people to um Instagram or Bandcamp, which is still really effective because it's like not everybody has CD players, so it's probably the most. And like the streaming service is probably how people are going to listen. But it felt really cool to be like, "Whoa, I did this, and here is like the physical, but the tactile sensation of being I'm holding this thing that me and my pals have worked on the whole first half of this year, or a little more than half." So yeah, it was great. Like the September was a joyful and tiring month.
Mhm. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so tell me more about the album title, The In Between.
Yeah, so when I arrived at that title, which I don't even know what year that was, it was I think that was maybe my just before I moved to Nova Scotia or the year of. So we're gonna say probably 2016. Um, and that was kind of what I was talking before about like that limbo transition period of just feeling like there are lots of experiences where I'm like trying to figure out what to do or what to say or where to go and not really knowing. Um, and yeah, feeling uncomfortable with the fact that I'm like, I'm not quite sure what direction I'm trying to move in though. So it's like I'm moving towards something, I don't really know what. So then how can like what decisions am I supposed to be making then? If I don't have like I guess a singular goal in mind, and then amidst all of that, um, you know, life is also happening, like family stuff is happening, mental health stuff is happening, grief is happening, and so just like navigating all of that. And I think that for a long time I kind of just felt like I was like floating along like a drift. I was like, I don't really know what's going on, and so I am kind of like had a tendency to be like, I guess I'll just spread myself thin and do all the things so that when I figure out what I want to do, it's not like I missed checking a box or something. But then that can just be tiring as well. And so yeah, it's just kind of like that space of being like, what am I doing and what am I supposed to be doing? And I guess it's kind of up to me. So what do I want? And or when you see something or you know something you do want, don't know quite how to get there. Um Anyways, it's a lot of like how I was feeling in those earlier years. And so I found that when I was writing, it was comforting, soothing to talk about either my experiences or experiences that I was like learning about through conversations, and just realizing we're just all trying to figure out like how to um, live with these really strong human emotions that I think is like such a privilege to experience, but can be quite difficult when it's intense. And I've learned that I can be quite an intense person. I think I was just like feeling a lot as well, and I was like, it's all too much, but also I don't want to not feel things. So, um, Yeah, so the in-between was born from just, I guess, my relationship with what that limbo, with how that limbo period, I guess, was affecting me, or or how I deal with transition. And now I'm able to appreciate kind of that in between spaces, like endless potential. Um, and as much strategizing as I try to do, because I do that, I'm like, what are all the possible scenarios, and what are all the outcomes, and which ones do I choose? It's like I can do all of that, and something could still happen that is way beyond my bounds, which feels more exciting now. Because I think before I was sort of like, no, I'll feel better if I just know all the things or all the possibilities, and I think I can relax a bit and just being like, well, if I anchor myself to things I care about, and I do the things I love, and I try to work on the relationships I have, then maybe things will be okay. And if they're not okay, then maybe I can trust that I can like work through that at whatever pace or energy that I need. Um yeah. So it was very long winded answer. Yeah, the title carries a lot of weight with me still. So sometimes it's hard to articulate it in a succinct way. But yeah, but that's the gist. Or I guess a piece of it.
Yeah, I understand. So going back to music therapy, I suppose, do you find that in the process of writing and recording these songs, you're able to resolve even partly some of these difficulties that you've been experiencing?
Um I wouldn't say resolve, but I would say I definitely feel comforted by it, and I definitely feel like a sense of release. So it's not like the issue's not there, but I feel like I've acknowledged it and worked with it in a way that like is easier to sit with. And I think it's because like words can be hard, and I think that with, at least for me with songwriting, I know that if I'm trying to get an idea across for me, it feels easier to do that when I'm writing a song, because I think there's a bit more grace, and not everything has to be literal, and everything has to make perfect sense on paper. It's like I'm using these words because they're what I connect to. And if at the end I see them and I sing them and I feel like it's capturing what I want it to, then I can leave like that and that feels okay. Whereas um, with me and like even just now speech and conversation, I can tell when I'm really like trying to be like, what is the word, like what's the way I can phrase the sentence so I know this person really understands what I'm saying. And but it's like it's just a different type of communication where um when I guess when I take that pressure off myself with writing, it just comes right back down to I'm really just articulating um how complex these emotions are in a way that works for me. And if I can look at it and I understand it and it feels right for me, then my job for me is done. And then if other people end up connecting that too, um, that's amazing and awesome. I'm so thankful for that. But also people don't have to, and that's okay because there's other music or their own music that they're going to connect to, right? And so it's great because it's like I'm something that I'm doing for myself, that I know has the ability to resonate with others, versus um, like me, I'm talking to you. So I want to make sure that if I'm talking to you, I want you to be able to feel like you can understand what I'm trying to explain, what I'm trying to say. Um, and so that we can like have a conversation, whereas I feel when I'm writing, I'm like, I'm just talking to myself. So if it doesn't really make sense to anybody else, that's okay because I know the way my brain's working. And singing has always been a soother for me. And so I find just like singing or humming anything is already something that relaxes me or allows me to like let whatever I need out. So that combined with um putting what my many thoughts are into simple phrases, um yeah, it's yeah, it's quite moving for me, and I can definitely tell because I don't write songs um as well, it comes and goes. Like I feel like sometimes I'll be writing a lot and then a stretch where I'm not writing a lot. And so once it's been a while since I've written and I do like come up with something, I can feel how much like my body um has needed that. Like maybe I've just been like something's been on my mind for a bit. And once I'm finally able to put that into a song, it's kind of like, whew, phew. Like I didn't even realize um that needed to come out in that way. But it's also a timing thing. It's like that probably wasn't ready to come out or to be in a completed song last month because I was still thinking about it, or I was too busy, or I was too tired. Um, so
So, what sort of feeling or inspiration do you hope that um, your listeners might get when listening to your music?
I think that because music for me is so much about um, really tapping into your own emotional experience. I would hope that whoever listens to these songs, my music, I hope that it kind of helps them give themselves permission to feel their feelings within that listening experience, um, and yeah, take whatever it is from it that um, that fits or is most personal to their own situations. Like I would hope that people can connect to in a way that um, yeah, that feels specific to them, or at least moves them in a way to kind of connect with um, their own processings in that time. So yeah,
Yeah, I see. I certainly get that while listening to your music.
thank you. I'm glad.
So, a concluding question, what does music mean to you?
Well, that's a big question. Um, what does music mean to me? Um, for me, music is a yeah, I would say music is a connector and a comfort because kind of time back to what you said earlier about like having your own personal experience with it, but also it being something you can like relate to others with because they either like share that preference or they're like into the same styles. I feel like um it allows for that connection without having to say everything outright. There's already like we have a similarity, but also it can be your own personal comfort or companion, especially for things that are difficult that you might not be ready to talk to other people about, or that you want to talk to other people about. It doesn't mean that you necessarily then have to, um, doesn't mean that you can't experience it or be in touch with that part of yourself at all. Like, I think I appreciate the fact that music has that innate ability to move and understand, excuse me, to move you and understand you. Um, and that because you're able to access parts of yourself through that medium, that it kind of like opens you up to seeking more of that, or then being like, well, now that I've been in touch with that place, I can talk to this person about it. um, or hey, now this music has put me in touch with like joy or improve my mood. I want to like talk to other people now, or continue on the track of my good day, and like I have the energy to do X, Y, and Z, because like I gave myself the gift of this listening experience or this playing experience, because yeah, there's definitely so much of it that's in the actual act of creating it as well. And so yeah, music is so much. I think it's just, yeah, it's just this beautiful complex thing that we all have our very specific relationships to, and ways of interacting with it, right? But yeah, I would say it's a grand connector because it can be for the people, but also um connecting. with yourself, which is probably the most important thing.
On that beautiful note, thank you very much, Valmy from St. John's, Newfoundland, for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.